word. All right, so I just want to announce our next session, which is the Gender Expression and Identity, Masculine, Feminine of Center panel. And isn't this beautiful? Yeah. I'm now going to turn it over to our other fabulous person here, Dr. Kim Parker, who will be facilitating. Okay, so I am excited, and we are just going to get started. If all of our panelists, who just go right down the panel, could give us your name, your city, state, and your gender pronoun. And then also, how do you identify? You can add that. Okay. Sure.
Samaria Johnson, Roxbury, Massachusetts. I identify as a female. And what was the last question, sorry?
Gender pronoun.
She.
My name is Freeman. I am also from Boston. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and hers. And how I identify is as a Black, queer, lesbian woman with a Y.
My name is Alyssa Green. I'm from St. Petersburg, Florida. I identify as a boy with an I, not a Y. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and sometimes sir. Hey.
Good afternoon, I'm LaShay Harvey, here from the great state of Georgia. I do, however, live in Baltimore, Maryland, so I'll take whatever that is. Thank you. I am a Black queer woman, identified, and I do love feminine pronouns, but you all can call me Grand Dame Queen Beast.
My name is Mia Clark. I live in... Microphone. I'm sorry.
Name is Mia Clark. I live in Dorchester, the dot. I identify as a male to female preoperative transsexual, and I prefer female pronouns.
Good afternoon, Saints. First giving out God. My name is Bakari Jones. I am from Baltimore, Maryland, where we say Baltimore, not Baltimore. I identify as a Black queer boy, B-O-I. Shout out to my pronoun at the end. And what was the last thing? I think that's it. Pronouns she, her, and sir makes me feel lovely.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so let's get started and ask the first question of hope. What is your definition of gender expression, gender identity, sexual orientation, and sexual image?
All of it? Yes. Okay, so my definition of gender expression, hope is a personal, is however you define yourself to the outer community. So how you dress, maybe how you act, like how you wear your hair, type of shoes you wear, however you choose to express your gender to the community is your gender expression. My gender identity, I would say your inner sense of self. So when you wake up in the morning, how you feel on the inside, who is that? That is your gender identity. Sexual orientation, who you are attracted to, your romantic attraction, your erotic attraction, and sexual image. That's hard. Your sexual images, or my idea or definition of sexual images. First of all, I feel like you have to turn yourself on before you can turn anyone else on. And so, basically what makes you feel good, how you carry yourself, what you think, what you read, what you eat. That for me would be sexual image, because it's all a type of erotic, and we have to find the power in that erotic. Audrey, Laura, y'all.
Yes,
Bakari, are gender expression and identity the same? If not, how do they differ?
I think they can be the same. For some people, they
line up, but I think for some they often alter. So you can kind of, like Hope said, the expression is on the outside and the identity is on the inside. So for some folks, they match up, and for some they don't. Some they put in the work to make them match up. So it kind of depends.
Anyone else on the panel want to weigh in on either one of those questions before we move on? Alyssa?
I would disagree with Hope. No, I was thinking.
All right, LaShay. Do you think our gender expression affects and/or dictates our individual perception of sexual image, in terms of ourselves and others even? If so, how might that be a good or a bad thing?
So the short answer is yes, I do. Part of that is because gender is one of the earliest things that we learn, and we learn how to do, even if we're getting these messages non-verbally, verbally, etc., in a formalized space or otherwise. And so I think that it's a disservice to think that young people don't already have these parts figured out. And so we think that, oh, they don't understand, they don't know, they don't get it, they're not present, and they really are. So I do think that the dictate of gender in that space is powerful. And I think an example is if we have someone who is trans and people don't get the pronouns correct off top, that just shows the years of our brains working in these kind of schemas to say this is what it is, this is what it isn't. Hips mean this, breasts mean that, and that's not a fault of anyone's, it's just what learning does. It's kind of what learning does in space. So with that, then to be negative is we do in turn, I think, cause a bit of pain when we don't want to let those spaces go, when we want to be really, really rigid in that, and this is what I know, so I need to let you know that I know it. Instead of saying, but some things could change, or we could try to learn differently. And I think gender, if there's anything under the tenet of sexuality that gets people the most geared up, is gender. Boys in pink, girls in blue, you know, strap-ons and the like, whatever. People start getting real iffy. So more than anal sex, more than bestiality, more than anything, people are going to get upset about gender. And so I think that is where it can be a little bit tough.
And can you sort of talk about what you think that's about? Why people are so worked out, or why that's the trigger?
Because they're crazy. No, I'm just that's not a valid answer. I think because we want to pretend that we are connected by race and you know, by hair color and geography, Bostonians versus New Yorkers or whatever. But the truth is, we are connected first to the people that we love based on those things about gender. You love grandma. Why do you love grandma? You love mom. Why do you love mom? And so that beginning, almost to say, if you're going to question gender, you're questioning everyone that I've ever loved. And you're going to ask me to redefine that, and I don't really want to do that. Because I'm redefining everything else in the process. So let me maintain something, some semblance of something that is constant. And unfortunately, it's like, this is probably the last thing that is constant, but we want to hold on to it. So I do think that it's an affront because it causes people to have to really kind of reevaluate their love.
Thank you. Alyssa and Sam, how can we be more inclusive of genderqueer and gender non-conforming identified individuals?
I think it just starts with anything with conversation. You know, like even in our community, we can be very exclusive of, you know, people who are trans or, you know, other types of queer people. And I think it starts with just having conversations and trying to understand really where they're coming from more, you know. And I also think it's also about being open, period. Kind of like what we were discussing earlier in the sexual taboo conversation, as far as just having an open mind. You know, like we come in with so many structured ideas of what relationships should look like, what love should look like based on how we were raised, and it's kind of like letting go of those things and just getting into the idea of people connecting on the basis of being people.
So I think that for myself, I'm someone who doesn't like to be put in boxes, doesn't like to have to answer to expectations, but I'm also very quick to put those expectations on other people. When someone tells me they're genderqueer, it's like, okay, but what are you really though? Like really, right? So I think that for me it starts with my own perception of people's identity and having respect for people's identity. And recently I've been saying there and they before I know a person, know how they identify specifically, because looking at a person you might think, okay, they identify as a femme, they're presenting femme, so they're just a femme, and that's not always the case. Just kind of being mindful of that and how I interact with people and how I identify people to myself has been a way that I can be more inclusive to genderqueer folks.
Can I just, sorry, it's so long there. From symposium. I think it's also important for us to check ourselves on our own transphobia and homophobia. Sometimes even we have our own rigid binary standards of gender identity, and so I think it's really important for us to keep open minds as we expect others to keep open minds.
I think we also just have to not take ourselves that seriously. I think as a community, I've had so many straight and queer friends say LGBTQIA, stop, remix, spectrum, and I understand that people are trying to be understanding of our entire community and that sometimes they don't understand. So if we, don't stop and check ourselves on like, okay, you know what, it is a lot of letters, it's a lot of letters, and give people the opportunity to have safe conversations, and sometimes just telling people we can use oops and ouch in a conversation. Oops, I didn't mean to say that. Ouch, when you say that, it may be offensive. Like the film, the clip we just watched when the mother says dyke, for some people that term, they can embrace that term because of their generation. For other folks, they can't embrace it because of their generation and it's offensive. So just really being open and honest and just, the people that you are cool with, when they say certain things, I think just checking them on it and letting them know, like, I'm not gonna smack you because you said that, but if you're out on the street, those might be fighting words. So I think we have a responsibility to tell people what to deal with.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that a little bit, that's kind of what I was trying to say. Like within our community, we have to be open to having these conversations, and it's kind of like you can be like protective or sensitive to a point where it's a detriment because then people aren't talking. You know what I mean? It's like that whole idea of like over embracing Obama to the point where you can't say anything negative about his presidency, and that can be detrimental because then conversations aren't happening.
Thank you. Nia, does the word queer apply to your identity, and what does it mean to you?
I say yes because for me, I feel like as a trans person, I identify kind of as heteroqueer. I do identify as heterosexual because I am attracted to cisgender and trans men. However, I also feel like I feel like I'm a part of the queer community, and so I need that as part of my identity. So in addition to just being a trans person, or I feel like my sexual identity needs to be representative of that as well. If that makes sense.
Okay, this is a question for all of the panel. So it's a wild card question. Do you identify with your race and ethnic background first, or your sexual orientation? And do you feel it's possible to live out both simultaneously?
Can I?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to go first? So I identify as a trans and queer person first, and it's because of I've just seen. I think in my life, I have encountered such prejudice from the people I was most connected with. I've seen it in the church, I've seen it in my personal family, I've seen it in my circle of friends, I've seen it in my co-workers. There is not a lot of acceptance for trans people of color in society in general. And when you go home and you look at the people that look exactly like you, and they're not embracing you, you feel like you're going to, that experience will be mirrored in every other facet of your life. And so you're very quick to kind of exclude all the other people of color, and you notice that you don't see a lot of people that look like you around you. So I mean, don't get me wrong, I am very proud to be Black. I believe that our people, and people of color in general, have made serious strides in this country. We are what, I mean, we taught them how to dummy. We taught them how to like, that's what we are. There would be no culture without us, you know? So I embrace that part of myself. However, when I sit in a room with other people of color and I have to question, you know, can I actually say that I'm trans and not be looked at differently? You know, I've had experiences where I've had friendships with people that started out as legit friendships. And when I disclosed to them that I was trans, it was like, who are you again? Like, that's the kind of experience I had. So yes, I mean, I identify as a queer person first.
For me, I identify with my race first, just because I feel like it's the thing that's most outwardly projected about me. And I guess based on how society is, it's the thing I feel I'm judged upon first. Before being a lesbian, I feel like I'm judged by my race. So it's just naturally kind of what I cling to. But I mean, I think they have to live simultaneously. I think it's impossible for them not to be, because I am both of those things. And I have to move through life as both of those things, you know? So I don't really see where you can separate them, but I do identify with my race first.
For me, I think that throughout my time here in Boston, having conversations with students about racial identity and being a queer person, often in spaces of students of color, I'm expected to not speak about my queer identity. And in spaces where I'm speaking with queer students, I'm expected not to speak about my racial identity. And I think that after having to choose so much, so often, that now I'm tired of having to choose which one is more important. I think that when people see me, they see a Black, masculine person. I think that no one sees me and doesn't recognize that I'm Black, or no one sees me and doesn't recognize that I am presenting masculine as a woman, right? So I think I hold both of those identities very close to me throughout my life and how I operate in the world as a person. And I think they do work simultaneously. I don't think that I don't see them as separate identities in my personal experience.
Guess we're gonna go down the line with this Blackness. I too connect with my race first. And interestingly enough though, I don't think that it happened until I moved north. So when I was in the South, there was no conversation about what I was. It was like I didn't have to think about it or be confronted with it or affronted by it or whatever the case may be. The further north I moved, I was like, okay. Oh, okay, I done brought a lie. Because I was told growing up in the South that, you know, the Northern are progressive, they're liberal, and they're yes. And I was like, no, they ain't. And that was difficult because in that very moment, I was like, not only was I sold a dream, but I bought it. I spent my own money on it. I don't receive it. I can't take the thing back. So part of that, I think, is actually because I am now experiencing being a Black woman so much more than I ever have. And I also acknowledge that I'm much more connected to being a Southerner than I am to being an American, right? So whatever, we can talk about Barack, but don't talk about no sweet tea, because then we have to shut it down there. So, but in addition, I say that because I think, I don't think that the conversations around my orientation and my queerness and my loving of women just doesn't seem to get the play. And it could be because of what I do, and everyone's like, yeah, Shay, we kind of expect that from you. We just didn't expect you to start talking about race in class. Ooh, how about that? So in a lot of ways, I think that I was forced in a way to have to think about it, where I wouldn't have, if I was someone.
So I was thinking about a lot of things, and I think I still play around with my identity. So like, what goes first? Am I a lesbian that's Black first? Am I Black and then a woman? And so I've kind of settled currently on Black, queer, lesbian, woman, and I put that in order of my qualifiers, or what exactly I want to be seen. So we already know that Hope is Black. Like, we see your race, we get that. but I am also queer and a lesbian, which might not be, like LaShay was saying, as visible. So when we're talking about visibility for myself and for my identity, it's usually black, queer, lesbian, and then, you know, woman. So it's kind of hard, I think I spoke about this last year, it's kind of hard to, especially being a black woman, when you say black, people automatically associate man or masculine. When you talk about woman, people automatically associate white and feminine, you know? And so as a black woman, I'm neither masculine, I'm not a man, and I'm also not white. So being able to embrace the idea that I am a black woman while putting those, like the queer and the lesbian pieces inside of it is important for me, because the lesbian shit is like, that's the white girl stuff. Like, you're not, you can't look like this and do that, you know what I mean? And so it's about being—
You're too pretty, Hope. You're too pretty there.
Right?
Oh,
I jump in, right? So, like, the thing is that, like, with being a black, queer, lesbian woman is more visible for myself, and then I'm able to play that out in the interaction. So they won't expect me to say, if you're saying something transphobic or homophobic, that I'm going to speak up on that. Well, I am, and that for me is embracing the queerness of my identity. I won't really touch on
My blackness comes first, and then my sexual identity, or my orientation rather. So in the end of 2011, I cut my locks off, and they were pretty massive, relatively long. And before I cut them off, I think I was always perceived as a masculine woman. And post-chop, I have been mistaken more times as little boy. LaShay and I went to lunch, and it was like, ma'am, your son is...
Damn good ass son is home.
It's never happened that way before. Maybe if I was in a department store and someone saw me from behind, just the locks and my aesthetic. But now, as a black masculine person, specifically with a low cut, I've had the, you know, Caucasian women cross the street, clutch the purses, you know, pulled over way more frequently by police, just in the last year and a half. So now I feel like my race by default comes first, because I recognize that as a black masculine person, it's like, well, we don't see a black masculine person, or you know, maybe if I was more feminine, it would be a queer black woman. I don't feel like our kind of white America sees that. I think they see this black masculinity, and it's like, well, if you are black and masculine, run for the hills, because nobody is on your team. So for me now, I feel like there was a time where I had the, to use the word privilege, I had the privilege to put my orientation first, and now I feel like whether I want to or not, it's like you are a N-word, flat out. So.
Okay, so here's another one for the whole panel. Depending on your race or ethnic background, is there a model identity that you are supposed to, quote unquote, live up to?
Jesus. Let me back that up and think about this some more. You're not real. No, I am going to say, recently, probably in the past 3 years, I've really struggled with organized religion, just in general. And it's bigger than church hurt and a white Jesus and a whatever, Mary Magdalene, all that. It's bigger than that. It is really, in some ways, this really sheep mentality that I think, I'm going to be real brazen, that people of color.
Yes.
Right, because there are multiple peoples of color who cling to religion. And look, I love y'all, don't come after me after this. But I think I don't feel like I need to be saved.
Yes.
I think that because of that, and because of my orientation, I should be seeking saving. I should be struggling day in and day out with me. And that I need some Messiah to clean it up. And I'm fly as it is. So I do think that, and then I'll say this as well. Part of the reason that I think that when I said Jesus is because you can still get a black dude, a black woman who ain't been to church in 15 Easters, right? Who will still give you all the Easters. Maybe miss all the Easters. No, they haven't been to 2 at least. Grandma got one of them. Is this notion that even they can tell me what the Bible says about me. Right. But brother, you ain't read a newspaper anymore. And I say that because it's that level of saying that if a dude who sells dope, kills, steals, whatever, and he can tell me that I'm supposed to be repenting under the office of Jesus, then I'm like, well, hell. That's the model. Obviously, everybody knows that's what, except me. Everybody but me.
I don't think it exists for me. I feel like when I first came out, it was like hyper masculinity, hyper femininity, as it is for many people when they first come out. You feel like you have to choose a side. And my mom is quintessential, AKA, so pearls and pink and green and don't walk on the grass and cross your legs and the whole nine. I was like, I'm trying to be the opposite of that. So I feel like my initial model was, unfortunately, hyper-masculinity. But I feel like I've since come to Jesus moment, if you will, ironically enough. And so I feel like every day I kind of get to make up my own model, and that's just being the best version of Bakari.
Yeah, that's what, I don't know, for me it was always weird because when I came out it was kind of like, I just came to this conclusion that this is who I am through a process of life, of like dating men and not really ever finding satisfaction in that, but thinking this is what I'm supposed to do, and then, you go through that confusion of like, why am I not finding any satisfaction in this? Is this what I'm supposed to do? And then does this just mean I'm supposed to be like lonely and hate sex for the rest of my life? Is this just my fate? And then you kind of open your mind to maybe there are other options. So when I came out and I started to present masculine, for me it was just like, this is just who I am. And then I got into the community and people were like, no, you are this. You're not Samaria, you're a stud. You're not, you're a soft stud. And I'm like confused. I'm like, I don't even get all of this. Like, I just like polo sweaters and bow ties because I always wanted to dress like Carlton Banks. It was just what I wanted. So for me, I never had one. People kind of like gave me one, like this is what it is. But for me, it was always just about being me. And I was blessed enough to have a family that was really accepting of me just being me.
I did not have that experience.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. You want to go?
No, maybe you go ahead.
Okay. I did not have that experience. I actually grew up with my family until I was about 8, and then I went into foster care, and that was not a fun adventure. I remember when I was about 16, when I had started dressing full-time as a woman, and my foster mother took me to court. And she gave me an ultimatum and said that she would rescind guardianship if I did not choose to continue living as a boy. And she basically said, you can come home with me as a boy, or you can do whatever you want as a girl. And I said, bye. So I chose me. I chose myself. I chose my life. I chose to live and be myself. Why not?
A lot about what a model identity for myself is, and then maybe what the model identity for like my family was for me. And so when you see me, I'm like, Hope is almost 30, and it's like, why don't you have a husband, where are the babies, that type of thing. And so now that they know that the husband part is not happening, it's the where's the babies. And so it's that part of expecting a pregnancy and being expected to care for another human being before I'm able to care for this human being has been like a real struggle. So I know a lot of people have, like your family's always pressing children, you have children, you're gonna have children, you're gonna have children. It feels like that's the model identity of my family because everyone in my family has children, and Hope had a dog, and Hope had herself, and that was it, and I'm okay with that, right? So I feel like for myself, my model identity is to be able to be happy in Hope's skin, like in Hope's dark skin with her nappy hair, you know what I'm saying, with her weight, be happy in that. So for me, that's my model identity.
I think that for me, when I walk into a space that is new and no one has heard me speak or has ever engaged in conversations with me, I feel that I'm expected to look and sound something like Rick Ross. And people are often very surprised at how I present and how I sound and what I'm about. And I think that that has a lot to do with their perceptions of black masculinity being aggressive, especially in relation to other women, and black masculinity, and me being expected to not respect women and to, you know, don't buy flowers, don't rub feet, because that's not what real do. You know what I mean? So it's dealing with those perceptions and those expectations, and like you mentioned, choosing to present yourself to the world as you are. I think there's too many people in this world operating and not showing the world who they truly are. And although it comes at a price, I show the world who I am every day. And I feel comfortable and I feel proud and happy to be able to get up and live that experience each day.
Also, I don't know if Alyssa and Sam agree, but I think for us on the more masculine side, I can say that Snoop from The Wire and Queen Latifah from Said It All clearly models of what everyone, especially in Baltimore, of what everyone assumes our particular gender expressions are supposed to live up to.
Right, that's why I can't get a date now.
Oh.
Not that way, that was a joking way. I agree.
You might get some offers.
I can't get a date, and that's sad.
Okay, I think we have a little bit of time now to turn it back to you, our audience, for questions. So we'll have a couple of questions from the audience. Well, yes, thank you.
Specifically for Bakari, you use the terms oops and outs, and I really want to understand that a little better, because it seems like something that helps conversation.
Yes, it's been helpful, especially in like group settings, when people are just getting to know one another. Pretty basic rules. If you basically tell people that they are safe in the space and that they can, express themselves freely, but if they say something that offends you, then you have the privilege or the opportunity rather to say oops, or rather ouch if something offends you. And if, let's say you told me not to call you a white sweatshirt wearer, and I slip up and call you one, then I can say oops, I didn't mean to, I'm still learning this, I'm new, bear with me, be understanding, forgive me basically. So just when you say those two words, oops and ouch, they kind of give people a little bit more slack, but again, in a predefined space, if you will, or setting.
Can I just say something about that? I think that oftentimes in our community we use some stuff you talk about with being easily offended. I think oftentimes, even I have fallen victim to being easily offended by someone and not wanting to correct that and not wanting to address that and just letting the ignorance continue. And I think it's, even though it probably shouldn't be our responsibility, it kind of is our responsibility to make sure to disseminate that information so we can correct people on the spot.
And a lot of times it's like children, a lot of us are adults, but if you don't correct someone the first time, certainly not by the second time that they say something, then by the third, it's kind of like it is ultimately it's your responsibility. You have to basically deal with that, because then it becomes well, I've been saying it all this time, why did you never bring this up to me? And we all know they already thought you were lying once you came out because they wanted to know that out the gate too. So
Right.
let's get all that out the way.
But I do wonder about the fatigue, sort of always addressing those
So
moments.
I don't use it in general conversation. I don't know if anyone else. I've used it in like group discussion spaces, bringing together queer folks, straight folks, you know, just mixed backgrounds so that we know this is a conversation about us all expanding our horizons and whatnot.
Well, I just want to say I'm going to take this to Creating Change because that's a national conference that's been moving around the country, and there have been hours upon hours spent on pronouns, her feelings, distinctions, and I think this might be actually a way to get people to understand that everybody's trying to learn what other people need, and if we could just give each other the ability to say, okay, it's not meant to be harmful, we're learning, that I think that'll move us a lot.
Really interested in the conversation about spaces and kind of finding common ground from different backgrounds. And I guess the question that I've had for a really long time is, how do you engage in conversations about race and gender without playing oppression Olympics? Because I feel like sometimes when I'm talking about these things, people are just like, stop telling me to check my privilege, you know? And so how can I have dialogues that are a little bit more conducive to social justice, I guess?
I think one, it is like addressing it when it happens, but being conscious of the fact that a lot of times people aren't doing things to be hurtful. A lot of times people are doing things because they're uninformed. And then to inform people in the way in which you would want to be informed. You know, like you don't want to feel attacked and you don't want to feel, you know, like someone's just talking at you. So it's like just engaging in conversation, I think, a little bit more rather than, because I think a lot of times what happens is we get offended and then we're just like, I can't believe, or we feel a certain way, we're so passionate and the person's not as engaged as we are, and so it's like we can't believe it. And you come on this like defensive, instead of it just being a conversation like when you have conversations with your friends, you know, about things like, sometimes people just aren't privy.
So that's something that I'm still working on. I'm being really honest, because when you said, yeah, how do we have a conversation from talking to someone about their privilege, and then they say, stop telling me to check my privilege, I'm like, right. You know what I'm saying? So, and you're only giving a statement. But I do agree. It is about trying to be more open, trying to woosah it out in yourself, and know that you're trying to provoke conversation and discussion that's supposed to be healthy, and the person is inquiring because they want to know. So, I mean, I think what some of the panelists said, like as far as education goes, and being able to inform people that usually these identities, they are interchangeable. Like these identities are overlapping, so the oppressions are going to overlap, right? So if we're talking about oppression Olympics, it's like we can get into that talk, but are we going to talk about how this is conducive to the conversation? So,
right.
Yeah.
But I think what's fundamental to what you're saying is, this is America. Everybody has been oppressed, is currently oppressing, right? And so in some ways we want to kind of step out and say, white men have never been oppressed a day in their life. And it's like, yo, but maybe they have, but if everybody's trying to put theirs in the piece, it's like, it's the American way. Let me show you how many I have, right? So you can see how many houses and how many oppressions I have, and I'm not minimizing that we feel as people of color, but let's not act as though that this is not what moves this country, is oppression, right? And so if we're gonna say we're in the Olympics, then we all running this thing, we're all throwing the gavel, we're all doing the high jump, because we're all in it. Like let's first say that. And I bet if we told people more time, you know what, you're oppressed too. Somebody would be like, shut up, me? Oh, wait on my privilege. No, you don't have any of that, right? And then before you know it, you know, the whole conversation up and now people want to talk about it. So.
I'm definitely still dealing with it. Boys of Baltimore, we had two of our members last week that both identify as boys, one identifies as a trans boy, and both agreed to wear dresses for 1 minute for every $1 that was donated to our Indiegogo campaign. We talked about it before as a group, like, y'all think this could offend anybody? We're like, nah, you know, actually the trans boy was who thought of the idea, and we, out of all the Facebook likes and shares and comments and kikis that were had, there was literally one person that sent an email that identified as gender variant and said that we had to check our masculine privilege and we were assaulting femininity. And on some level, it's kind of like, it's just not that deep. Like, we were, you know, all of the members were, and I'm not negating, you know, the fact that we all have sensitive spots, but sometimes it's not that deep. And if we're going to move forward, you have to be able to say, did they intend to offend me? Do I really think that this group or that person decided, like, you know what, I intentionally want to offend TJ with wearing a dress and heels and makeup to raise money for a fundraiser? And sometimes it's just not that deep sometimes. So I think we have to, you know, we have to understand all of our individual struggles, oppression, privilege, the whole nine, but then sometimes it's like you gotta take a step back and I don't take one to the head, I don't know what, but like just relax, relate, release a little bit and just realize that if we're gonna all work together, like, you know, if we're still trying to move forward, there's not gonna be space for us to keep challenging one another, like you said, with the whole oppression Olympics, it's above, so.
I haven't really been able to have this conversation because I'm more concerned with being able to keep my job based on my gender identity. I'm more concerned with being able to use the bathroom that best corresponds with my gender identity. So I think that, you know, trans sisters, trans brothers have a long way to go. Boston is kind of whitewashed when it comes to the trans community out here. I don't, you know, I can't mortgage my house to get the procedures I want done. So, I mean, I think that we have a long way to go before we can have a lot of those discussions.
What do you think is more harmful to your being, the white, gay, bi, lesbian, trans community, or the black, straight community?
Both. I think they tag team together, honestly.
I would say the black, because the black community or the people of color, they can cut you to the white meat. I mean, they're able to mobilize such a powerful entity when they have that collective voice. And to, I mean, think about, you know, James Baldwin and how he wanted to be so involved in the civil rights movement, such an amazing and wonderful person, and he couldn't because of the homophobia in that community. Just think about our potential if we could get our black brothers and sisters to engage with us. I think that would take precedence.
Yes.
I think at present, I think the, oh, sorry.
No, I was saying I just want better music at the club.
We know that, Sorry, no offense to anyone who likes to listen.
I think right now the white LGBT community has more potential to cause us harm, and that's only because of the difference between like race and racism and prejudice. I think when whites historically have organized, they have a political base, they have an economic base. They can, I mean, we saw with, you know, marriage equality, you know, Facebook went red for, you know, it was like, oh, they made it happen, So I agree with Nia in that we have the potential to do more good, to do way more good than I think our oppressors could. But at present, I think the white LGBT community is way more organized than people of color are, that are all kind of scattered about bickering with each other. So.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I mean, you know, it always kind of goes back to personal responsibility to a degree, you know? It's like what we choose not to do. It's like when you go to like Atlanta Pride, which is, you know, a large black gay community, and most of the Atlanta Pride is just clubs. You don't have a lot of symposiums, you don't have a lot of panels, you just have a lot of like clubbing and sex and alcohol. And then you go to what we consider white pride, and there's panels and there's conversations going on. So it's like we kind of make a decision, and it's just something that plagues the black community, I think in general. We make more decisions in that way, and we continue to do it even in the gay community.
There was a question in the back.
I just wanted to know, how does the panel define femininity and masculinity?
Ooh, yes, that's a...
Hold on.
panels define femininity and masculinity?
She is trying to take us out. Individually?
Oh, it's an individual.
I'll tell you a story. I was recently trained by the Human Rights Campaign to be a trainer for their All Children, All Families initiative. And I remember being in the room with this Southern white woman who was talking about some of the, what I call tactics that they had used down south to make some of the trans-identified women kind of conform. And I remember them talking about this community center where they had a number of trans women and they decided to bring in some drag queens to the community center to teach these women how to properly apply makeup so that they looked more like women. That would be the antithesis of what I believe. I believe femininity, for me, is based on my gender identity. It's how I just express myself. It's not about the makeup I wear. It's not about a dress. It's about how I interact with my girl over here. It's how I interact with people. That's where it comes from for me. I mean, I'm very outdoorsy. I love going outdoors. Does that make me masculine? I don't think so. I mean, I like my nails. This is the first time I've had them done in a long time. Does that make me feminine? I don't think so.
So for me, my masculinity was defined by unlearning the masculinity I saw growing up as a child, and teaching and having personal responsibility to teach myself what I thought healthy, positive masculinity was. I think that masculinity for me is how I express myself and how I interact with people, and kind of like my attitude towards the world and towards the people that I have encounters with. I've learned that it's not about bow ties, and it's not about, masculinity isn't tied up in women. It's how you think about yourself and how you carry yourself and express yourself throughout your life.
So, I'm sorry.
I'm thinking still, go ahead.
So the first thing that came to my mind was femme-mystique, or what that necessarily means. Because I think, and we've said this a lot, that femininity and masculinity is not necessarily tied up into gender or sex. So a femme-mystique could be a cisgender male that is heterosexual, but there is some kind of feminist about how he wears his clothes or how he moves or how he walks, and the same for other types of people. So when I think femme-mystique for myself, I know that I'm very proud and happy to be a woman, and that doesn't mean that anyone else isn't. And I know that it's not based off of my expression. So it is that individual sense of self as far as what femininity or masculinity means for us. For me, I think femininity means being able to wake up and navigate the world around me in the face of kind of street harassment, or in being able to, like, people who don't see me as queer enough or anything like that. So for me, it's very proud. I'm very happy about my femme-mystique and however that manifests depending on the person I'm talking to.
Thinking about whoever's gonna take my trash out. But no, I'm being facetious in that space. Slightly. Because again, I acknowledge being connected to as a Southerner, right? So it's really about the how you take care. I'm not saying how you pay my bills, right? But how you take care. And so I was really grateful, unlike Alyssa, to have amazing men in my family who just took care, right? They made sure everybody was good. Other men, the women in our family, the old, the young, and they exerted this as though it wasn't taxing, right? So this is just easy to do because this is what I do, not girl. Oh, right? I'm like, who is complaining, right? And I'm not saying that men can't or masculine folks cannot. But I think that what I learned from masculinity is that I do this because I want to. Like, I'm choosing to do this. Where femininity was the same way, right? Now, this ain't my story. I don't really want to make your plate. But I understand. I don't. But I also understand that in some ways, that's a level of taking care that feminine energy does. And so even as a Southerner, I'm gonna make sure you got something to eat when you come to my house, right? So it's much more subtle than it is men do this, women do this, or masculine people and feminine people do this. It's really about the nature of how you take care, but the locus of which and the genuineness of which you want to do that. So don't tell me that you get up and go to work and take care of this. That's what you're supposed to do. You don't get extra credit for doing the things that's on the syllabus. So it's that, to me, it's that level of how people take care of the space, and they do it because they want to, and they check themselves on the doing of that. So I do like my door open, and I would be lying if I didn't say that. And hello. And I think that those are real. I think sometimes we niche down so many things about what it can't be. And I'm just like, hey, if you like heels and your door open, say so, right? If you like to see your girls in lace, say so. I might not, but just tell me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for me, it's a lot similar to what you're saying. Like, I always identified masculinity with the representation that I saw of it in my family, which was a lot of very strong men in my family. So for me, when I started to project masculine, it was important for me to be like a provider, to be able to take care of my partner in certain kinds of ways. And I mean, I think sometimes we get so sensitive about, but you have to understand, like, our understanding of things start from somewhere. And most of the time it's from a hetero perspective. And then you unlearn behavior, you adapt whatever you choose to adapt from there. So masculinity to me was always just, providing and being there. And that was what I took from it. Not necessarily taking out the trash and, like, changing tires, because I don't do any of that. I don't know how to do any of that. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know how to I have two brothers. No, I don't. I'm not up for that. But I will be, if the tire is flat, I feel it's my responsibility to figure out a way to get it resolved. You know what I mean?
I agree with pretty much what everybody I think has said. I've also realized, like, my definitions of masculinity and femininity are about this life, like my own experiences. So, without stereotyping and, lumping everything together, it's like my own personal experiences. So for me, masculinity means, again, being a provider, but it also means being a nurturer. So when my father was in our household, he wasn't employed. So he cooked, he cleaned. I had French toast for breakfast every morning. He did my hair, the whole nine. So for me, my version of masculinity is very nurturing. And I think it's very chivalrous. So I like cooking by default. I just actually hate washing the dishes. So to me, I don't necessarily think that equals femininity, but it's just something that it's not a part of my definition of masculinity. I just don't like it. But oddly enough, I participated in the Brown Boy project, and Brown Boy was how I learned about the term masculine of center. And it's actually a term, like, I've sat with it for a really long time, and I keep trying to, like, make it fit, but for me, I really think that masculinity and femininity at the root are both kind of born out of femininity. So I see the ability to wake up and be feminine, like, born out of femininity, but I also see my masculinity as being born out of the strength that I align with femininity. So it's like I feel like I wouldn't be able to sit here with a bow tie and a vest and a blazer and men's shoes on, or what have you, if I wasn't inherently connected to my own femininity, like, at the root. So it's that femininity that allows me to say, I want that to come through a different lens that happens to be more masculine.
Okay, we have time probably for one more question. And so I want to think about, so put your outro. We have had numerous conversations about the adverse effects labels can have on everything from how we are perceived, how we perceive others, and the behaviors we develop. Why can't we move away from labels? And what do you think it will take for us to change? So, sort of forward looking. What do we have to do? Give us some marching orders.
We have to embrace chaos, I think. Because I personally feel like the reason why we've learned gender and we have these innate feelings of what gender is supposed to look like is because it's neat, it's in a box, we can control it, we know how it works, we have the directions, we know the directions, like you don't have to reset the VCR, right? So if there is chaos, then what do you do? Like, what do you mean you're not a woman? Or what do you mean you're not a man? Wait, you don't wear skirts? And you don't do this either? I feel like embracing the chaos and definitely the oops, ouch, and like embracing the conversation, which is still something I'm learning, is definitely prevalent.
I would be a bit more rebellious and say, I don't know that we need to move away from all labels. I know a lot of people, especially in our community, don't want to hear it, but I mean, our brains are set up like we're going to categorize things. So to me, the easiest way or the quickest way that we can move forward would be for us to create safe spaces for people to have conversations about the labels that they prefer and the labels that they abhor. Because I think that there's power in being able to select a label, to select the name that you call yourself. So, you know, going from a nigger woman to an African queen is very powerful. If I get to put that label on myself. So rather than pretend like they don't exist, like, people are going to, when they see you with a tie on and, you know, some Kohans, they're going to think, oh, okay, that's a John, that's a Butch, that's a whatever. So just embrace it and then tell people, no, I actually don't use the term stud, I prefer boy, or I use dyke, or whatever the case is. I feel like the sooner people start embracing reality, the sooner we can move forward. Like, stop running.
Yeah. I was gonna agree with Bakari. I don't think it's a matter of reducing or breaking the boxes, right? Because there's some people who need that. There's some people in the world who will be type A to the end of the time, tell them what to wake up, what to wear, what to do, how to suck it, whatever. That's just what it's gonna be. And that to remove that from them is doing exactly what we're asking other people not to do to us, is take away that which we know to be ourselves. So I think that what we need is an expansion of, and allow those people who are type A, no offense to those who are, have as many cleaning products, as many organization, IKEA trip, whatever you need to put it together, use that. I don't have all that room in my house, and I don't want it anyway. So if I'm going to let it just stay junky and be chaotic for a little bit, that's cool too. That's fine too. So I definitely think that we need an expansion, more so than we need just burn it down.
Yeah, I think the more honest you are about the more honest you are about the fact that you already have, you know, preconceived notions yourself, like we all do, the more open the conversation can be. And I mean, labels are still going to be involved. It's just like race. It's like you can't say, oh, racism doesn't exist anymore, or let's not pretend there is no race or there is no differences in race. There is. It's a fact. There are differences. You have to accept that because that's just what it is. And then you can grow from there. You know, but we have to be real about what's happening in the now. Like, you project certain things, like we were just talking about projecting masculine and being black. There's certain expectations that come with that. There's certain ways that you have to move and live and change as a result of that. And you know, and you're making a choice to do that to some degree. That's it.
I believe labels are helpful at times and not at others. Like, I think of things like the Michigan Women's Music Festival and their Women Born Women policy, and how even though I have my identity and how I identify, I will never be able to step into this place to see music that I gravitate toward. You know, I just, like, it boggles the mind that people would ever construct such a policy to alienate people, to alienate other women. It's just a travesty. And so I think it's important in creating these labels that you also respect the labels that other people have.
I would say that respect is a big factor in going about labels and understanding people's identity. I think that when something isn't labeled or isn't put into a box for us, we don't know what it is, and that makes people nervous. And that makes people not want to have conversations about it because it puts them in an uncomfortable position. And a lot of people, like myself, don't like being put into uncomfortable or awkward positions to speak about things that are touchy or might offend people or not. I believe that, personally for me, that I've had to stop perpetuating my own ideas of what identity should be on other people and start listening to people when they tell me how they identify and start respecting it. Respect fosters understanding, and I think that if we can all approach people with that, then we can move forward.
Okay, please join me in thanking our And I would remind you to please take a minute to fill out your workshop, your session evaluation. All of that feedback helps the wonderful founders plan for an even better LOCS2013. Thank you very much.
Dr. Kim Parker, ladies and gentlemen.